Hello everyone, welcome to this video tutorial. In today's tutorial, we are looking into transaction volume, see what we can do about volume and what kind of filters we can create around the volume. So just like the price, volume is another very important um, information source that we can use in technical analysis. So the technical analysis methodology, price and volume always, intertwined with each other. Both of them are, we can reveal lots of information out front. So in the previous video tutorial, we talked a lot about the prices, which is include our traditional open, high, close, low prices. Volume is another very important topic, so that we're going to investigate it today. And so because this is another video tutorial in our indicator filters playlist, so let's explore this concept and see what we can do about or what's the functions and supported in the technical analysis application to let a user create filters around the volume. Okay, so the volume stands for the transaction volume, right? Okay, let's open our application. Obviously, if you open a daily chart, the volume means the daily chart volume. If you open a weekly chart, there will be the weekly volume. Same with monthly and yearly. As you can see, at the moment, I do not import anything yet. So in order to do the market scan, so you need to import the basic market data into our application. So because we want to use the market scan, you cannot use the memory safe mode, right? So that's very important. If you enable the memory safe mode, you cannot use the market scanning functions. So we are always mentioning this kind of basic concepts from time to time from along the way with our video tutorials. Okay, so for today's concept, for today's content, we're going to import Australia and stocks. So remember, our release version, our first release will only support stocks and not support any other types of the data. We are going to support the rest of them in our future releases. By the time we let everybody know. So for now, we're just using stocks, and we're gonna import ASX 200, which is top 200 Australia shares. Okay, so let's import and click this import button. Let's come back when the data is imported successfully. Okay, the files are processed successfully. We imported data. Once we finish data import, we refresh the tree. As you can see, all the shares data has been imported. Okay, now let's go to exploring the indicator filters. If you want to create the indicator filter, you have to go into the analysis user manual and select the first item, indicator filter management, because under here we create lots of indicator related filters. Okay, once you open up the indicator filter management, as you can see, the indicator filter tree or the support indicators are open for us. So before we go into, as you can see, I have created all the indicators filters before the tutorial, so we're going to explore it one by one. But before that, let's just quickly go through what's the functions that will be supported for the volume indicator. So as you will know, our application, the technical analysis tool, treats price and volume as an indicator as well, and that's why in this tutorial we are talking about the transaction volumes. Right, before we go into the details, let's explore in let's take a look at the documentation of the indicator filter function, and take a look at the volume related functions. Okay, so this is transaction volume related functions. All those functions are going to be so you can use all those functions to create the conditions. Okay, so let's just take a look the one by one. So the first one is value. So the value basically means you get current units trading volume. So the value means you will get the trading transaction volume for this current unit. So if you choose daily chart, so that's gonna be today's trading volume. If you choose the weekly, there will be this week's trading transaction volume, right? Same with month and year. So basically, if you use this function, and then you just get this transaction volume for the current unit. Second function is previous value. The previous value means returns the previous unit's trading transaction volume, right? So if you pick up the daily chart, that will be return yesterday's transaction volume. If you use a weekly chart, they're going to return last week's transaction volume. Okay, all-time high and all-time low, so that will be return the entire chart timescales. So if you're using to get all-time high, will return the highest transaction volume for the entire chart. All-time low means getting the lowest transaction volume for the entire chart. So if you're using daily, so that will return that specific day's transaction volume. Okay, so it's pretty much similar with the price. All right, so you can get an all-time high price and all-time low price. Same here, you can get an all-time high transaction volume and all-time low transaction volume. Another one is to get an average of the last. So get an average trading volume for the past number of units. The numbers of units defined in the average of last text field. All right, so right here. The chart type is defined in the chart type drop-down list. So basically, if you choose weekly, and you need to specify that if you're trying to use in the get an average of a last, so you need to specify a number of how many weeks you want to use. So basically, we'll get your average transaction volume for the past 30 weeks. So if you choose weekly chart, right, and if you choose daily chart and you put 30 in the average of last year, you will get the average transaction volume of the past 30 days, etc. All right, same concept. If you get 52-week high and get 52-week low, and that's unlike the price. So if you pick up the volume, it will give you the 52 weeks highest transaction volume, and it get you, if you use another one, get a 52-week low, it will return the past year's lowest transaction volume of common equity or stock. So because as everybody knows, the 52 weeks, every year has 52 weeks, so that just give you the yearly highest transaction volume unit, or the lowest transaction unit for the past year. Duration high and duration low, that's the function will get the highest transaction volume of common equity, and the user define the duration. Same here, so you have to define the duration of text editor. Basically, you need to input a number. If you pick up the chart type is a week and you put a duration of 30, and that means you will get the higher transaction volume for the last 30 weeks. Same with the get duration now. It will get you the lowest transaction volume for the past 30 weeks if you put 30 in this duration of text edit. So it's quite similar with the price. About this kind of, let's take a look the actual indicator filters up, see what we can do with this functions right here. So the name of the function is quite self-explained. So if you do have the questions, always come back to the documentation page of our main page. So you're going to hit the indicator filter function documentation page. I think most of the questions will be answered here. So if you do have more questions, you can leave your comments under the certain video tutorial. So let's see, our team members will try their best to answer your question. Okay, let's just finish the documentation review. Let's go back to the application. All right. So the way I'm gonna demonstrate the functions is just create the filters. I will explain the filters here, and I will create the market scan, and I will review the market scan results. Okay, let's take a look at the first one. So we already create the first one is actually using the weekly volume. So let's see, it's using the function of a volume and compare with a simple moving average of volume, transaction volume. So all right, so as you can see, if you the first one, if you select the certain condition and click the modify condition, so all these controls are enabled for you to do the modification. But for now, I just trying to explain here. So left hand side, we're picking up the indicator as the volume. We're going to use the transaction volume. We're using the weekly chart, and the function what we are using here is value. The value means it just give me this week's transaction volume, right? So we compare this value with, because we pick up the operator as diff. So the diff means subtract. So we're talking about just using this week's transaction volume to subtract with a simple moving average values. The simple moving average is calculated based on transaction volume as well. Remember from the indicator video tutorial, if you have watched our simple moving average indicator tutorial, you would know we can calculate the transaction volume's simple moving average. So basically it was saying in here is the moving average, 30 weeks moving average calculated based on volume. So what do we get here is actually so in the range we are defined has to be larger than at least 200%. So what happened? So what this condition saying is give me all the security or equities stocks which have so this week's transaction volume has to be large, has to be 200% more than its 30 weeks average transaction volume. Okay, so basically you're looking for this week's transaction volume spikes, and this value has to be 2 times than its 30 weeks moving average. 30 weeks moving average transaction volume. Right, so we're looking at the volume spike for the stocks. Okay, so let's use this condition to do the market scan and see what we get. If you want to create a market scan, you go into the analysis and click the market scan management. As you can see, we have already created one here. Okay, so let's see. Okay, so we already select the underlying market is ASX 200. We are going to use the condition, which is that one. Let's see any results we can find. So in order to kick off the market scan, you need to go into the market scan control panel and select which one you want to run. What we're gonna run is the volume diff with 30 weeks moving average of 30 weeks moving average transaction volume, and this difference has to be 2 times. So we're looking for a volume spike for the current week. Let's kick up the first one. Okay, so look like give you the summary, and then this looks right, and then you click OK. So as you can see, we have two results here. Going back to our market scan management and right click, refresh the results, double click on that. We do get two of them. So first one is CIM. Okay, if you double click and open the chart, right, so the chart look like that. And let's bring up the volume. As you can see, the current week do have a volume spike. And let's see what is the 30 weeks moving average of transaction volume of this stock is. So in order to bring up that one, you need to open the moving average, the first one, you click on that. Okay, the default is the 5 weeks price of moving average calculated based on closing price, but we want to 30 weeks moving average calculated based on volume, so you need to change it to a volume right here. If you select the volume, transaction volume, so as you can see that that line where, so as you can see the green line right here, if I change it to a more obvious color, a light blue, as you can see that line is the average transaction volume for the 30 weeks. As you can see, this week obviously is two times than that average value, because it's spiked outside that, above that moving average line. So the result is correct. We do get a volume spike. Okay. Right. Let's take a look at another result. The MFG. Same here. Let's bring up the volume. So this week's looks like its gap is taken up. It's falling sharply and with a huge volume. So that's the current week's volume spike. So this week's transaction volume created a spike. If you open up the moving average 30 weeks, and we calculate it based on transaction volume, the last one, so it's way above that that average line. So at least like 4, 5, or 6 times more than that. Okay, so the results is correct as well for this one. So as you can see, even a very simple function, volume, weekly chart, and value, you can use it to against another moving average. You can get quite useful information from it. Okay, so this is the first one. Let's close that. Let's going back to the indicator filter, and let's explore the second one. Again, so second one is the second one. As you can see, if you select that one and modify, so what we do here is we're using this week's transaction volume value, right, equals to the 30 weeks duration high. So basically what this condition is using, the right hand side conditions a little bit because it's using another functions supported by the volume, which is get duration high, and it's using 30 weeks duration. So and they're using the equals. So what this condition is looking for is get me all the stocks that the current transaction volume equals to the, okay, so current week's transaction volume creates a duration high. It's just creates it's pretty hard to explain it. Basically, it is fine. It is quite so. Right. Let me just think about just a few seconds. Okay. So it is looking for all the stocks. So all the stocks with current week's transaction volume created a past 30 weeks highest transaction volume. So this week had a transaction volume. We have a volume spike. instead of comparing with a moving average value like the previous one, we compare with the duration, the 30 weeks duration. So we compare with our 30 weeks transaction volumes. So this week's transaction volume has to be the highest transaction volume for the past 30 weeks. Any weeks before this week has lower transaction volume than this week's. So we do find another volume spike, yes, but this time we compare the last week's. We don't use the moving average calculation. We just give me the highest transaction volume, which has happened this week. All right, maybe an example in a chart will explain much more clear. I will explain a little bit more there. So this condition, just pay attention that this condition we're using two functions. The left hand side using the value. The right hand side we use it duration high. Okay. Now let's go back to our market scan. Okay, so the second one. So we use this one to the market scan. Okay, let's delete that one for now because I just did it yesterday. Going back to market scan control panel and looking for which one we need to run this time. So we need to run duration 30 weeks. So that first one, click on it. So as you can see, we looking for a values. This week's transaction volume equals to highest transaction volume past 30 weeks duration, and click OK. So you give me 112 results. Oops, so that probably is another one. Oh, sorry, that's the duration low. We need to get that one to run. Sorry, that's wrong. This one is correct one because it's duration high, 30 weeks. Yes, we got 3 results from here. Let's refresh the results. Double click on that. We have 3 stocks fulfill this condition. So let's take a look at the first one. The CIM, that's pretty much the same one from our moving average scan. So basically, okay. So this market scan this market scan find this stock for us because this week's we had transaction volume spike, but if you count from here and the 30 weeks backwards, like 1 2 3 4 5 6 7 8 9 10, 1 2 3 4 5 6 7 8 9 10, 1 2 3 4 5 6 7 8 9 10. So I think you got it from this one. All right, so in this duration, okay, I'm gonna just draw a arrow from here right to this one. Maybe the rectangle is better. Okay, that's a rectangle. So this week's transaction volume is the highest transaction volume for the past 30 weeks. So the duration high is this week's transaction volume, and that's pretty much what we want to find out. Okay, so that's return the correct value because it has the duplicated results and last scan. Only if this one is different. Let's take a look at the CSL. Right, the CSL. So obviously it returns correct value because this week's it has the highest transaction volume for the duration of more than 30 weeks. It's probably more than 50 weeks already because that's backwards to 2021. That's more than 30 weeks. That's more than a year. So actually today's transaction volume right here, that one, okay, equals to the duration high. All right, the duration is 30 weeks. Okay, so basically this function is actually used for when you want to find out, do we have a transaction volume spike for a period of time. So the period of time is up to you to define how long that duration is. Maybe in that duration, the stocks is in a consolidation period, right? So you want to scanning the market and give us a transaction volume happens during a consolidation, and you want to check if a price breakup happened or not. So it's quite useful for those kind of scenarios. All right, so this is the duration high and the low. All right, let's going back to this indicator filters to see what we've got. So here is the duration low. Instead of we get the highest transaction volume for the past 30 weeks, this time we are looking for the lowest transaction volume from the past 30 weeks. So only difference with the previous one is the right hand side we chose another function. Instead of duration high, we pick up the duration low. Okay, so let's go back to market scan. Let's looking for the right one. That's the market scan for the duration low. Let's do a market scan now. Okay, remove the old scan results. Going back to your control panel, looking for the first one. Okay, so current week's transaction volume equals to the 30 weeks duration low. Okay, that we have 112 returns. Okay, now let's go into explore one of them. Start from the first one. A2 milk. Let's bring up the volume. All right, so instead of the duration high, so this week's we have a very small transaction volume, tiny small one right here. Instead of looking for a transaction volume spike, we are looking for, by using this function, we are looking for transaction volume shrink. So a shrink is the lowest level for the past 30 weeks duration. So it looks like that one is the correct one. It's obviously the lowest transaction volume during the past 30 weeks. Let's have a look at one more example. The AGL. Okay, the AGL is another example. This week's we have a green volume, transaction volume, because the price is moving up still, but it's very low for the volume strength, and it is the lowest transaction volume. If you look backwards, it's more than 30 weeks. This week has a really low transaction volume. Maybe it's close into the Christmas period. Lots of institutions are going on holidays. Yeah. So anyway, so that's the lowest transaction volume. Okay. I think this one is also useful because you can use it to check the volume strength. The volume strength sometimes reveals some of the information, means that the market's actually at the moment for this particular security not much interest on this particular security. Not many people want to buy, meanwhile, or not many people want to sell. It's very quiet. It's happened. We would like to see this happening in the consolidation period, and that means it's approaching to the end of the consolidation. Once the volume picks up again, you want to see the price move in very decisive in a certain direction. All right, let's going back to our indicator filters, looking for the fourth. See what we have used here. So okay, so this one, if you to make it look more clearly, so we just modify that. Left hand side still the same. We're looking at the weekly transaction volume. We're using the value function, larger than The right hand side, this time we used to get an average of the last. Instead of using the moving average way to calculate a moving average of a transaction volume, and this time we just simply using the 30 weeks average transaction volume for the past, or saying for the last 30 weeks, right? The moving average you have to calculate it from the very beginning of this chart, but this method is backwards from the current one, and we added up all the weeks transaction volume together and divided by 30, so we get another average value. I compare that one with this week's transaction volume. So this week's transaction volume has to be more than that average number. So this is quite useful if you obviously you already know the stock is actually in the consolidation for at least 30 weeks. So you can do a market scan to find out the security that is current weeks or days or months, years transaction volume is over. It's bigger than an average number. Okay. Anyway, so let's do a market scan for this one and see what we can get from the market scan. Open the fourth one. Okay, so that's the third one right here. Again, delete that old result. Let's go back to market scan control panel, and looking for the one we want to run this time is average of the last 30, so that's second one. Obviously we want to run this one. Let's start it. It's give me 12 results, and then we come back here, refresh the market scan results. Okay, we got quite a bit here. That's okay. Let's take a look at the first one. For this count, because we need to okay, let's bring up the volume. So this one is, as you can see, the current one is have this little spike right here, but this value is bigger than its 30 weeks transaction volume. So basically you have to include 30 weeks. For example, I'm not going to calculate it right here, but what that means is you calculate all the transaction, you added up all the transactions for the past 30 weeks, and then you divide it by 30, and that number have to less than today's transaction volume, which is this guy. Okay. Let's take a look at another one. Same here, because we cannot calculate it to save the time. We're not going to calculate here, but yeah. So this function is just return that value. So if you want to compare the current units transaction volume with the sum of the average kind of concept of transaction volume for past how many time units, I strongly recommend you use the previous one, which is you rather than using use this method by using the moving average, and calculation base, you select the volume, right, and then you put a number how many time units you're interested in. For example, 30 weeks moving average. So basically, if you're using this method, you can clearly see the moving average value or average value from the chart. So that's why we strongly recommend you guys using the moving average combined with the volume instead of using the last average number like that one. Okay, let's explore the last two of them here. So this one is the compare with the past year's transaction volume equals to today, so equals to this week's transaction volume. So okay, this condition means give me all the stocks that current week's transaction volume, right? This week's transaction volume is the highest transaction volume for the past year, right? It's a huge transaction volume spike, right? And because that condition just so it's going to be showing us this information. If you use this for the market scan, you would see a spike of this transaction volume, and it creates the high transaction volume for the past year. Let's do let's close that one. All right, let's go into see which market scan we already created here. So that's that one, obviously. Let's delete the old results. Okay, so as you can see, the condition is we're using the 52-week high has to be equals to this week's volume. Let's do a market scan now. That's the one we want to run. Okay, and we start it. Yes, we have fulfill two stocks from the result set. Not many, because this is quite a rare scenario, because it requires current week's transaction volume creates or past year's transaction volume. I mean, it's going to be the highest one. Let's bring up the volume. So for this CSL, okay, right, that's absolutely correct, because this week's had a volume spike. It's higher than the previous one, but it's obviously higher than, because it's December, that past week, that 52 weeks, so you have to point to the last year's December. So this week creates the highest transaction volume during the past year. Okay, that's what we found out. Now the second one should be the same. So very obvious. This is create a multi-year transaction high already, be honestly. So that's, you have to return back to 2020. So now is 2022 almost. So past year December's right here, obviously our all-time high. Okay, so this one is the correct result. Cool. Let's close that one and exploring the last one from here. So this time we're using the all-time high. So this one, okay, so this condition, we are using the two functions that we haven't used before. The first one is get all-time low, right? And this condition means scan them all the market and give me all the stocks. Its previous week's transaction volume equals to its all-time low transaction. So basically, it's very weird, because this one is be using the previous value, so that's gonna return your previous unit's transaction volume. If you're using weekly chart, so it's give you last week's transaction volume. So this condition wants to get all the stocks with its last week's transaction volume creates a all-time low transaction volume. So it's really shrink transaction volume. It happened last week. All right, so let's see what we can get from the market scan. So I'm not, for all the example indicator filters, sorry, all the conditions we created here is only for demonstration purpose, right? So looks like not very useful, for example this one, but it just give you guys an idea how you can combine all those functions together, right? So to get some of the information out for the market. Okay, let's do a market scan based on this weird condition. Going back to market scan management trade here. Let's take out that's the one. All-time low has to be has to equals to the previous week's transaction volume. All right. Let's do a market scan. Looking for a function all-time low equals to previous week's transaction volume. Okay, so that's the only one we haven't run yet. So okay, click on that. Review, summarize the condition. That looks right. That's the condition we want to run to against. And okay, so let's click the OK button. It only returns two results. Very interesting. We do have two shares fulfill this condition. All right, let's open the first one, OSH. Okay. Now, okay, so let's just take a look. These all-time low equals to previous week's. Interesting. Let's do a scan again because that's okay. I think you still get that one, but let's take a look at the other one for now. SKI. Yep. Alright, so previous week's is right here. So as you can see, the previous week's wallet is 0. Okay, why? Because it's probably stopped, suspended somehow. As you can see from here, the volume, transaction volume for the previous week. So previous week, oh, that one is 0. So 0 obviously is the all-time low transaction volume. Maybe this stock has suspended trading for the past week, also this week, so they're all 0. So that's correct result. Let's take a look at the OSH. I'm not sure what happened to this one because okay, this week is 22nd, sorry, 24. Today is 24. Last week's gonna be the 17th of December. Let's take a look at the 17th of December. So as you can see here, take a look at the volume right here, and the date is 17th of December, and the transaction volume equals to 0. And this week has not finished yet, so this week has no value. This stock also has suspended in transaction, so previous week's transaction volume is to 0. Obviously, 0 transaction volume will be the lowest, the all-time low transaction volume. So the scan itself returns correct stocks, but yeah, we haven't expected the stock has been actually stopped suspended. But yeah, the result is correct, right? Okay, so let's just finish up this. Let's close the order chart here. Going back to the indicator filters. All right, for now, actually, we have been run through all the functions that's supported by the volume, right? So you guys have looked all the functions in action in the market scan, but some of them that I created here are not quite useful, but some of them might be useful. And it just depends on how you want to use this volume indicator, and you create the filter around the volume. It depends what kind of information you want to find out from the market. Personally, I think you would like to use this one a lot. So because you want to compare the current week's transaction volume with a moving average, so it's very convenient, right? Because you can actually see this moving average value, for example 30s. That's what I mean. You pick up the volume as a calculation base. Yes, you can see from the chart clearly, and compare with the current week's volume, transaction volume with that line. So everything is visualized for you. So that's quite useful, personally. But also, yes, other type of functions you might be very important for you. Depends on your situation. So, okay, so I think I have went through all these volume related functions, and I put it into the market scan and show you guys how in action of how this function is working. So always come back to find, if you have questions, always come back to the documentation page, read through those description for each functions. If you have questions, you can come back to this video tutorial and just so you find find out more information if you forgot, just in case you forget how to use it. Okay, I think that's pretty much everything I want to talk about for the volume and an indicator filter around the volume indicator. So hopefully this video gonna be helpful for your analysis. Okay, I'll see you guys in the next video tutorial. Thanks for your watching. Thanks for your time. Bye for now.